Hi everyone, you're very welcome to this morning's training session. So just before we kick off today, I'm just going to talk you through a few quick things here. We've already completed the sound check, so thank you to everyone who helped out with that. If you do need to increase the volume, you can do so on your phone, or if you're using the mic and speakers option, you can do this on your computer. Today's webinar is also being recorded, and we will send a copy of the recording along with the presentation slides to all attendees. We'll have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, and if you could send through your questions throughout the webinar, we'll try to get to as many as possible afterwards. So to type in the questions, you can do this at the right of your screen on the control panel. So today's training session is from the support desk, tips, tricks and FAQs. And today we have two presenters, Audrey Mooney and Jenny Hussey. Audrey and Jenny are experienced payroll professionals and have been providing payroll support to Thesaurus customers for a number of years. So I'd now like to pass you over to Audrey to begin from the support desk, tips, tricks and FAQs.
Good morning everyone, and thank you for joining us. So we're going to look at some time-saving tips. The first thing we would look at is the employee details request form. This can be accessed by going to Employees, Add and Amend Employees, HR Details and Employee Detail Request Form. So this form, when complete, will give you all the information you require to set up and pay your employees, for example, bank details, PPS number, email address, etc. It can be used to gather information for new employees, but in addition to this, it can be used to update information for existing employees. So you may have employees on the system without addresses, for example, so this form can also be used for that. The HR Details utility can also be used to record emergency contact details, medical information, etc. So just to show on the software, if we go to Employees, Add and Amend Employees, and into HR Details. So here we have the Employee Detail Request Form. So this, as I said, can be useful to hand out to new employees. You then have all the information you require to pay the new employees. So you can see surname, forename, address, etc. So it's all of their contact information and also information in relation to previous employment, HR details, etc. So when you have received that back complete, it does give you all the information you need to set up and pay the employees. It also will allow you then to record the HR details here in the HR Details utility. So for example, emergency contact details, medical information and other information. So it is a handy utility. Okay. So the next thing we will look at is just adding and amending employees the USC cutoff points. So if an employee has standard USC cutoff points, you can indicate that you wish to use the standard USC cutoff points on the software. So you can click on the Revenue Details tab within Add and Amend Employees and into USC cutoff points. And there you have the option to tick to use the standard USC cutoff points. This facility can also be used to indicate that an employee is exempt from USC rates 3 and 4. If you do have a P2C file, it's always advisable that you would import using, do your update using the P2C file. But for anybody who's not registered with Ross and you have manual, employer tax credit certificates, then this is how you would do it on the software. Okay. So again, within Employees and Add and Amend Employees, you can also use your process icon number 1. See, in Revenue Details, you have USC cutoff points. So when you click into any of the fields here, you have Amend USC bands. So here we have the option to use the standard cutoffs. Okay, so that auto-populates the standard USC cutoff points. So it does save you having to manually enter them. As I mentioned earlier, you can also tick to say that there is no USC rate 3 or 4. So if somebody is exempt from the 2 higher rates of USC, you tick to say that there is no USC rate 3 or 4 on the tax credit certificate. We do get a lot of questions in relation to the entry of the USC cutoff points. They are listed differently on the employee tax credit certificate. It is always the employer tax credit certificate that you should be using. And as previously mentioned, the ideal would be an import from a P2C file. Okay. Okay, so another useful tool on the software is the ability to create the CSO returns. So the Earnings, Hours and Employment Cost Survey and the National Employment Survey returns can be prepared within Thesaurus Payroll Manager and uploaded to CSO online. But in order for the software to be able to compile the statistics, the CSO tab must be completed for all employees within Add and Amend Employees. The returns can subsequently be prepared by going to Utilities and CSO EHECS or CSO NES. Your CSO number will be required for the preparation of the file. Okay, so within Add and Amend Employees, as we mentioned, you do need to complete the CSO tab for all employees. So this is their category of employment. So are they manager, professional, clerical, sales, service, or other? Are they full-time, part-time, or an apprentice stroke trainee? If the employee is not paid by the hour, you must also enter in the number of hours that they normally work per week. So once this information is complete, you simply click on your update on the right-hand side. So that tab must be complete for all employees on your payroll. Even if they have been P45 at this stage, it does need to be complete. You can look at the master file, so by going to Employees and View Master File. Just bear with me there till we just scroll down. We scroll down to the bottom of the, apologies, bear with me there. So you can see here the CSO information. So this is always your check to make sure that the CSO tab has been completed for all employees. If there was something missing, you would see not entered at one of these points. Okay. So once the information is complete for all employees, you can then go to Utilities and CSO EHECS. So this is the quarterly return for the Earnings, Hours and Employment Cost Survey. The National Employment Survey is an annual return, so that wouldn't be completed within your 2015 software until the year is actually complete. So we can look at the Earnings, Hours and Employment Cost Survey. So the very first time you come in here, you do need to enter in your CSO enterprise number. So this, as I said, is mandatory for creating the return. In addition to that, you would select the quarter that you need to prepare the return for. So there's a lot of information that will come in from the payroll, but there's also information then that's outside of the scope of the payroll, for example, training costs, recruitment costs, redundancy payments maybe. So this should all be entered before you actually complete the return in relation to job vacancies, etc. So you fill in anything that is relevant to you that needs to be completed and then fill in the contact details like so. Okay, and click on Prepare. So it'll automatically by default save into the C drive and into the CSO folder. I can click on Save. Okay. So this is how the return looks. It's not the easiest thing to read, but this is how it needs to be received by the CSO. Okay. So it gives you the option then, would you like to log on to the CSO secure deposit box so that you can lodge the return? Once you go to close out of the return, it does give you the option then to print a hard copy. So this can be handy for your own returns, or if for some reason somebody doesn't want to complete it online, they can use this then to complete the hard copy return. Okay. So the next thing then we look at is just to print a list of employees. So this is a list of the employees' names and PPS numbers only. So this report can be found within Add and Amend Employees and Print List. So this is an alternative to accessing the master file, which has such a huge amount of information on it. And similarly then, to print all information for an individual employee, you can go to Add and Amend Employees and select the employee and print. So just to show on the software, so again by going to Employees and Add and Amend Employees, so we have the option here on the right hand side to print lists. So as we mentioned, this will print a list of names and PPS numbers only. Okay, and save. So there's my report with simply names and PPS numbers only. So I've printed that to PDF, but you can also print it, to your dedicated printer. If I wanted to print just the details for Joe Adams, I can click on print. So this is giving me all of Joe Adams' information, his PPS number, address, department, USC information, all his revenue details, just every bit of information that is on file for him. So just to look then at the P2C import, so this is an automated way to update employees' revenue information, so their tax credits, cut-off points, USC information, etc. So the P2C file can be exported from ROS, and once exported and saved, it can be imported into Thesaurus Payroll Manager. So to import the P2C file, you click on ROS, P2C, and Update from Revenue Tax Credit P2C file. The Thesaurus Payroll Manager will automatically search for the most recently saved P2C files, that is files that are 30 days or less, so they've been exported 30 days or less. Once the file is selected, all contents will be displayed on screen, and you can click on Update to amend the employee records as per the P2C file. So again, just to show this on the software, go to ROS, P2C, and Update from Revenue Tax Credit P2C file. So in my instance, I have it on the memory key, but it would search the more common areas, for example, downloads, the desktop, to look for the file to save you having to browse for it. So if it finds it, it will pop up showing you recent files found. Well, the alternative then is to click on Locate File. So you can select the file. It's telling me here there's no LPT information on the file, which there should be. In the real world, every P2C file should have LPT information. I'm just going to click on that for the purpose of the test environment here today. So it displays the information from the P2C file, and I can click on Update then to update all employees with the information on this file. There's also the option to print the P2C details, so this can be a handy report for your own files. So if you want to print a hard copy, you can just click on Print P2C Details. So this is just my hard copy report then if I wish to print that. Okay, so some people do and some don't. That's completely down to user preference. But to do the update then I can click on Update. Okay, and it's telling me Update Complete. So it will give you a list of all the employees that have been updated. If there are anybody that isn't updated, it'll give you those as well. So it's telling me the following employees on the payroll did not appear to be in the revenue file. So if they're on the payroll but not on the revenue file, then there's no way of updating them. So it'll give you the list of those people. And you also then have a list of people on the revenue file that are not on your payroll. Okay, and you do have the option of adding anybody that's on the revenue file but not on payroll to your payroll. Okay, so that may be a new employee that has been registered with revenue but you haven't yet set up on payroll, so that can be a handy feature. Okay. So as mentioned earlier, that is the ideal way of updating an employee's revenue information, the P2C import. It's the quickest way and it also cuts out the chance of human error. Okay. So just to move on then and look at tax certs required. So to review employees' revenue information before processing payroll, you can access tax certs required within the employee menu. So this will list employees with no PPS numbers entered, employees on a temporary basis, that is a week one or month one basis, and also employees on the emergency basis of tax. So to access the utility, you go to employees and tax certs required. So I can see there that I have an employee with no PPS number on the system. And also an employee that's on the emergency basis of tax. So I mean, this is a handy thing to check just every now and again, especially now at the time of year that we're at approaching year end. So ideally you would have a PPS number for every employee on your payroll. Okay. Okay, so just to look at the quick edit then. So the quick edit facility or utility allows you to amend employees' pay details, additions and deductions, and their tax status within one screen. So this can be accessed by going to Payslips and Payroll Preview Quick Edit. So this facilitates the fast, effective processing of gross to net payroll. And within this utility, payroll can be entered by the hour or by basic rate. It conveniently keeps track of the last employee edited, so very quickly you can review the last employee that you have amended. Illness benefit cannot be entered within this utility, so if you do need to process illness benefit, that does need to be processed within the weekly or monthly input screen. Okay, so we just take a look at the software. So you can go to Payslips and Payroll Preview Quick Edit, or you can access it using the process icon number 3. Okay. So this lists all of the employees that are due to be paid for the pay period that you're in. So by double clicking on an employee, it gives you the option to amend, as we said, additions, deductions, basic pay details, tax information, etc. Okay. So if, for example, I needed to pay an addition in this period, in the addition and the amount. And when I click on OK, if there's any amendment to PSI class, etc., it will also bring it up here. So this has now been amended and it's telling me that Joe Adams was just edited. So quickly I can see that I have amended him. Okay. Excuse me. It's a handy screen because you see your additions and deductions all within one screen. Regardless of where you do the payroll, this should always be the last step before processing the payroll. Generally speaking, if a mistake is made, this is the place that it will be spotted. So if you see something, it may be that this bonus, I forgot to take it out. I can just amend it here in the next pay period. Okay, so it's a very handy utility. Okay, so changing hours. Okay, so all basic pay information can be changed here within the payroll preview. It then gives you the option to process, which is to update your payslips. Okay, it is important to note that the payroll preview can only be printed before you update the payslips, because once you update, you are then previewing the next pay period. So if this is a report that you wish to print, you do need to print it before you update the payslips. Okay. Okay, so just to look then at the bank payment file, Thesaurus Payroll Manager supports the paying of employees electronically. So once employee and employer bank details are entered, bank payment files can be created within the software ready to upload into your business banking. So this can be a quick, convenient and secure way to make regular wage payments to your employees. The bank payment file formats currently supported are SEPA or SEPA, the Standard 18 and Bankline, which is specific to Ulster Bank Bankline customers. The bank payment file utility can be accessed within the Payslips menu. Just to have a look at the software. So under the Payslips heading, you have bank payment file normal, which is including SEPA, and you also have Bankline then, which we said is the Ulster Bank Bankline customers. So for the majority of people, they will be going to normal, including SEPA. So the very first time I come into this utility, I do need to put in my employer bank details. So I'm getting the message there. So I put in my sort code. Okay. Every time you click into a field, it does tell you exactly what it's looking for. So you can see down here, it's telling me that this is the bank account number. So each field gives you a help, if you like. So reference, then it's telling me that's whatever is to appear in the bank statements. The user ID then is issued to you by your bank. So that is a 6-digit number that you need to get from the bank. The owner ID is exactly the same. So you can see there when I put it into user ID, it auto-populates the owner ID field as well. The volume ID then is any 6 characters of your choosing. So literally any alpha or numeric characters. The expiry date, we have yet to see a bank issuing, so you can leave that blank. And the file name generally then would be bankfl.emt, so bankfl.emt for electronic money transfer. So once that information is complete, you can click on Update Company File just to save that company bank information. So it's telling me now my company record has been updated successfully. Okay. Once I have my bank, basic bank information in, I then have the option to use the SEPA or SEPA format, which most people now would be using. So I can tick to use SEPA format. On the left-hand side there, I do need to select my BIC. It does currently default to Ulster Bank, so you do need to click on the drop-down menu and select the relevant BIC for you. So in my case, it's Allied Irish Bank. It then auto-populates the IBAN field, and I just again once click on Update Company File. Okay. So once that information is all complete, I can click on Prepare. Okay, so it gives you the message there just about the SEPA payments. They may require 1 working day to reach the employee's bank accounts. So that is something that should be checked on your with your own dedicated bank. Okay, so just bear with me there for 1 second. So once you've got the employer bank information in, you also need to put in the employee bank information and put them on a pay method of credit transfer. So I select credit transfer. Okay, I don't need to put in the BIC and IBAN. I can put in the bank account number and sort code, and the system will automatically generate the BIC and IBAN for me. If you ever want to check them, you can click on BIC and IBAN here, and it'll show them for you. Okay, and update. Okay, just do another one. The other fields, the bank and the branch, they're optional fields, so you can update them if you wish. Okay, and BIC and IBAN. So that's always a check that this program is able to generate the BIC and IBAN for the account number and sort code that you have entered. So that will work for Irish bank accounts. If somebody wishes to get paid into a non-Irish bank account and they only have the BIC and IBAN, there's a separate utility for that under Employees and enter BIC and IBAN, and there's a video there also to show you how to do that. Okay. Okay, so if I go to Payslips and Bank Payment File Normal including SEPA, okay, so it'll default to the last pay period that I have paid the employees for and the pay date that was on the payslips. So some banks do require the pay date to be 1 day before, so I can simply amend the pay date there and click on Prepare. Okay. It gives you the option then to make changes to the amounts being paid to the employees. So for most people, and the majority of the time, the answer to this would be no. Okay. So then it's giving you the option, where you would like to save the file to. So, some people will put it on a memory key, others will have it, a dedicated banking folder on their C drive. You can save it anywhere you wish once you know where it is when you're within your banking software. Save. Okay. So it'll tell you then that it has been prepared and where it can be found. Okay. You do have the option then of printing that report as well. So you can click on Print. And again, some people wish to keep this for their own payroll records. Okay, so this gives you the list of employees being paid by credit transfer along with their BIC and IBAN, the amount that they were to be paid, and the number of employees in total. So that file is now created and saved, ready for you to upload into your internet banking, your business banking. We are aware that some people are accessing their online banking and doing individual transfers to employees. So this method is a lot quicker. Again, it cuts out the chance of human error. So once you've updated the payroll with the correct information, you can be assured that the bank file then in turn has the correct information. So it's certainly a much quicker method of doing your bank payment file or your credit transfers. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at then is the workings within the payroll software. So there's a detailed payslip working or calculation available behind every payslip. So this feature provides explanatory step-by-step guide to the calculations behind the PAYE USC and both employee and employer PSI deductions made for every employee's payslip. So the working details the structure of the payslip to you, the employer, and can be given to the employee to explain their payslip in detail. Workings can be viewed or printed before and after finalising a payslip. They can also be emailed to an employee to accompany their payslip if you wish. So sometimes employees will query the calculation behind PAYE, for example. So this can be a handy thing to give to them. To save you having to perhaps work it out yourself separately. You can give it to them. If they still have questions, then they can come back to you with them. So to view or print a workings calculation for an employee prior to updating their payslip, you can go to Payslips, weekly or monthly input, enter in the employee's pay accordingly, click on Update File, and then view PAYE, USC and PRSI workings. To view, print or email the working calculation for an employee after updating their payslip, you go to Payslips and print/email PAYE, USC and PRSI workings. So we'll just take a look at that on the software. So within the pay period, if I want to query the deductions, once I've entered in my pay to the employee, click on Update File, and here we have View PAYE, USC and PRSI workings. Okay, so this is a detailed calculation behind each of the deductions. It's not a requirement to give with every payslip. Some people wish to give them, others don't, but they're handy there if they're ever required, if an employee looks for them afterwards. Okay. Just bear with me there. So after the update, the workings can be accessed by going to Payslips and down to Print, Email, PAYE, USC and PRSI workings. So they're there for the most recent pay period by default. You can also though print historical ones by clicking on the drop down here, and you can select any pay period to print the workings for. So that can be a handy utility. Okay. So just to look at the employee payslip history then, so should an employee request historical payslips from a certain period, these can be printed all at the same time within Payslips and Print Email Payslips. So by selecting the 2 per page high resolution, 2 per page low resolution or the Irish language payslip, you have the ability to print employee history, whereby you can enter the period number you wish to print from. So we'll take a look at that on the software now. So Payslips and Print Email Payslips. Okay. Like the workings, you can always print payslips for historical pay periods by clicking on the drop-down arrow, and all previous pay periods are available to you. Okay. So if I want to print a history of payslips, for example, for Joe Adams, I can simply select on his name, click on Print Employee History, and I indicate the first period that I want to print from. So I've set 10. Because I'm last showing period number 18, it'll print the payslips from week 10 up to and including week 18. Okay. So there we have the payslips going from week 18 right the way down to week number 10. So it's much quicker than going into each pay period and selecting the payslips individually. So this allows you to do them all in one step. Okay. So just to look now at the calculator within the payroll. So there is a built-in calculator allowing employers to simply calculate on a week 1 or month 1 basis the estimated deductions and employer cost of employing an employee at a certain gross pay. So this feature can be accessed within Help and Calculator. So you enter all relevant criteria and click Calculate. The PAYE, USC and PRSI deductions will be calculated, giving you a net pay payable to the employee. It'll also show you the employer PRSI, so this would give you the cost, if you like, of employing that employee. Okay. So just to take a look at that on the software. So under the Help menu, we have Calculator. Okay, because we're in the weekly payroll, this is a weekly calculator. So you enter in the desired gross pay. So this could be a projection for, a potential new employee. So without having to set an employee up on payroll, you can quickly do a forecast. It can also be used perhaps maybe to look at, a potential increase for an employee. You may want to see, with a certain increase, what their pay would be like. So you enter in the pay. If anything, whichever is relevant here for the age category, it does default to 16 to 65, which is the majority. If it's a proprietary director or a medical card holder, you can indicate that. And then you just click on Calculate. So you'll see that it's defaulting to the standard tax credit and cut-off point. and the standard USC cutoff points for this tax year also. So you click on calculate. So I can see there the net pay based on a gross pay of €600, and I can also see the employer PSI contribution. So the cost of employing this employee and paying €600 per week would be the €600 plus the employer PSI contribution. Okay, you can print this as well if you need to pass it on to somebody else. Okay, so there's the printout of that projection I have done within the calculator. Okay. That's it for me now, so I'm going to pass you back to Rachel, and thank you very much for your time this morning. Thank you.
Okay, thanks Audrey for that. That was great. I'll just pass you over to Jenny now, who will talk you through the frequently asked questions. So bear with us a second now.
Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, Rachel. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for our training session. I'm going to be looking at the most common FAQs from Thesaurus Payroll Manager. Okay, so one of the most common queries we get is how to rectify a mistake made in a previous pay period. There are a number of things we recommend you do before proceeding with anything. One is to take a backup of your payroll data to date to your normal backup location or to an external directory. Two is to print off any relevant reports that may be needed to assist when re-entering any of the data. And three, and probably the most important one, is to determine the correct pay period you actually wish to go back to. Once you've completed these steps, then you have a number of options available to you, depending on how far you actually need to go back. So the first option is to reverse the last update. This allows you to cancel the last update that was performed and amend details in that actual pay period. The next option then is to reverse an older update, which allows you to cancel more than one update. And the third option then is to restart the payroll year, whereby you're actually resetting the payroll files back to the beginning of the tax year itself. Okay, so we'll take a look in the software at the first option, which is to reverse the last update. So to reverse the last update, you go into the heading Payslips, down to Reverse Update, and you'll see there's a number of options there, but the one we want to use here is Reverse Last Update, and that will basically bring us back to the beginning of week number 37. The original pay details will be retained, so it is not necessary to re-enter the payment details for all of the employees. Just make whatever relevant changes you need to and re-update the period again. And you'll see when we go back into weekly input, we're back at the beginning of week number 37. All work you've completed since the last update will be reversed. So if you'd issued a P45 or added a new employee, they will need to be re-entered. Okay. The next option that we want to look at is reversing an older update. So just bear with me while I do another payroll. Okay, so to reverse an older update, you're going into the same process, so pay slips, reverse update, but this time we're selecting reverse older update. Again, the original pay details will be retained in the pay period you're reversing to, so it is not necessary to re-enter the payment details for all employees in that period. All work completed since the last update will be reversed, so again, any subsequent pay periods, P45s, new employee details. However, the consequence of this, and you'll see it comes up in a big yellow important note box, is that using the reverse older update function is that internal backups used for the reverse are subsequently deleted. This is necessary to ensure the integrity of your data. Okay, so do make sure that you do read this. And again, it brings us back to one of the must-dos. You do need to make sure that you are selecting the correct pay period to reverse to. Again, it will ask or recommend that you take a backup of your payroll data. So in the instance whereby you do select the wrong period, if you take a backup, you can restore that backup and select the correct period. Okay. So you get the option, where do you want to go back to? And from this list, you can select whichever period that you actually need to go back to. So in this instance, I'm going to go back to week number 40. Okay, you've chosen to go back to where the payroll was just before you ran the update for week number 40. Are you sure you wish to continue? So click on yes. The requested files were successfully restored. So this, when I go back into my weekly input, is leaving me sitting on week number 41 ready to go. Okay. The last option then that we're looking at is to restart the payroll year. So in the unlikely event of the payroll being a complete mess, you also have the option to clear down all of the payroll data and start afresh. This is a hidden function for obvious reasons, we hope. So within the help menu, you go down to the last option, which is about Thesaurus Payroll. And when the About screen is up, you hit Control and N for November on your keyboard. And this will bring up the option for the Restart Payroll Year. In here, you select the company that you want to restart, and you get two options. Restart the payroll, delete all benefit files, or restart payroll and retain benefit setup. So this is for the instance where you have a company that has benefit in kind set up. So if you have medical insurance or company cars, more than likely you will want to retain that information. If you don't, then you can restart the payroll and delete all the benefit files. All cumulative figures will be set to 0 and all payroll process will be lost. The employee's current revenue details will be retained and bank details will also be retained. Okay. Okay, so all of that information is in the PowerPoint presentation that you have there. So the next question, an employer receives notification from the Department of Social Protection that an employee has been receiving illness benefit pay while out sick. How does the employer account for this on the Thesaurus Payroll Manager? So let's first look at the employer responsibilities. The illness benefit must be taxed by the employer without exception from the first day of the employee becomes eligible for payment. If notification has not been received by this time, the employer must assume that the employee is in receipt of the normal taxable benefit, which is €188, and deduct PAY from it in the week it is due to the employee. The employer should not wait until notification from the department is received to start taxing the illness benefit. Employers must continue to implement the instructions as and per the tax credit cert or the P2C file that's been issued by Revenue. If the employer does not change the employee's tax status from cumulative basis to week 1 basis unless Revenue has stated so by reissuing of a P2C file or tax credit cert. Employers must deduct PAY from any illness benefit received by the employee regardless of whether or not the employee pays the employee while they're out sick of work on sick leave. Okay. There's 3 possible scenarios we're going to look at. So 1, the employer does not pay the employee while they're out sick. 2, the employer pays the employee while they're out sick and the employee retains the illness benefit payment from the department, i.e. he does not give it back to his employer. And thirdly, the employer pays the employee while they're out sick. The employer receives the illness benefit payment from the department. Again, all of these scenarios will be dependent on the company pay policy. So we will take a look at the first scenario. So within the payroll, if I go to my weekly input screen, and I'm going to look at employee Maria Woods for the moment. Okay, so it's scenario 1 where the employer does not pay the employee while they're out sick. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do here is zeroize the employee's pay. Okay, so for the duration of the sick leave and record the illness benefit that's taxable within the dedicated illness benefit section. So change my basic pay. Actually, if you just bear with me 2 seconds there. Okay, so change my basic pay for this individual to 0. I go into my illness benefit tab, which is located above the employee name. And I want to tick that the employee is out sick for more than 6 days. The system is automatically defaulting to the standard illness benefit rate of €188. Okay. And I update file. The system automatically defaults to PRSI class 2J0, but illness benefit is only applicable for PAY, not PRSI and not USC. So just change that there, and you'll see the illness benefit has been added for PAYE purposes, but in this instance this employee's tax credit is actually covering the PAYE aspect of it. Because the employee is in receipt of that benefit directly themselves, it has also been taken back off the net pay. Okay. Scenario 2, where the employer continues to pay the employee while they're out sick and the employee retains the illness benefit payment. Generally with this scenario, the employer has agreed to top up the employee's wages so they're not at a loss. So the employer would normally reduce the employee's gross pay. So if we look at that Maria Woods again, her normal gross pay was 500, let's say, for example. The employer wants to top her salary, so as such her taxable gross would still be the 500. So what we need to do is reduce the gross pay by the illness benefit amount. So instead of 500 in the weekly basic, we're going to enter in 312. And in the illness benefit section, the 188 remains in place. So when you update file here, okay, you'll see here's my normal gross pay, which is going to be tax, PRSI and USC. Here's my illness benefit, which is only applicable for PAYE, and you'll see the taxable gross is the €500. Okay. This was a wrong employee to look at because I've actually got her set to emergency basis. Let me just bear with me 2 seconds, we'll change her. Sorry folks, just bear with me 2 seconds. I'll use Audrey's tip of using the standard cutoff point here just to show you how quickly we can do that. Okay, so back to Maria Woods. Her weekly basic has been reduced to accommodate for the 188, but her taxable gross pay is the 500. Okay, please ignore the refund of PAYE there. So just in that instance, whereby the employer actually continues to pay the employee, generally they do tend to top up. So you need to make sure that you do reduce the gross pay for the individual, record the illness benefit, and you'll see that it has been taken off the net pay as well, so the employee is not generally at a loss. Okay. The third scenario, so where the employer pays the employee while they're out sick and the employer receives the illness benefit directly from the department. So the steps for this scenario are exactly the same as what we've just covered. Let me just do something here. Okay, so in this instance, the employer is actually going to keep the illness benefit. Sorry, the employer is being paid the illness benefit. Okay, so the employer is topping up the gross pay as before, so we've entered in the reduced weekly basic. In the illness benefit tab, we've ticked that the employee is out sick for more than the 6 days, and the 188 is being recorded. But what we also need to tick here is the second option, is that the employer is in receipt of the illness benefit payment directly from the department or from the employee. And basically what that does is that includes the 188, so the taxable gross is there, but leaves the net payment at the higher figure because the employer is keeping that payment as opposed to the employee. Okay. So moving forward, and again, you'll see all those scenarios are listed in the actual presentation. So you may ask which scenario actually applies to your business. Each of the 3 scenarios we've looked at are legally correct. It's the employer's own decision as to which scenario they wish to implement. Our advice is that once an employer decides on an approach to illness benefit payment, they generally should implement it consistently across all cases. The best practice is to put sickness policy and sickness pay policy in place to clarify the issue for both managers and employees. And you can view sample sickness policies in the Bright Contract software, which can be downloaded from brightcontracts.ie. Okay. The next question relates to the cycle to work scheme and how to operate that within the payroll manager. There are 2 methods which could be used to account for it. Method 1, which is revenue's preferred method, is a basic salary sacrifice by simply reducing the employee's wage or salary based on the salary sacrifice agreement and enter this amended amount in the software. Okay. Method 2 is what we are actually going to look at and is the most commonly used method, is whereby you enter the periodic repayment amount as an allowable deduction. This method facilitates employees who are hourly paid and entering a reduced wage or salary amount as per method 1 isn't viable. So for example, an employee normally receives a weekly gross wage of 500. He enters into a salary sacrifice arrangement for the cycle to work scheme. The total cost of the bike or bicycle equipment is 750, and the employee agrees to repay his employer €50 per week over 15 weeks. We will be concentrating on method 2, as I've just said, as this is the most commonly used option. So just a few points to note first. Under the cycle to work scheme, employers can pay for bicycles and bicycle equipment for their employees, and the employee pays it back through a salary sacrifice arrangement of up to 12 months. Where a salary sacrifice agreement is entered into, there must be a bona fide and enforceable alteration to the terms and conditions of employment, exercising a choice of benefit instead of salary. Under the salary sacrifice arrangement, the employee is not liable for tax, PRSI or USC on their bicycle repayments. There is a limit of €1,000 on the amount that can be spent. This includes bicycles, safety equipment, delivery charges. Where costs exceed this amount, a benefit in kind charge will apply to the balance. Employees can only avail of the scheme once in a 5-year period. This applies even if you do not purchase equipment up to the €1,000 limit. And the bicycle or safety equipment must be used by the employee mainly for qualifying journeys. This means the whole or part, i.e. between home and train station, of a journey between the employee's home and normal place of work, or between the normal place of work and another place of work. So just to show you that on the system. Okay, so if I go into the employee section, and I'll select Stephen Jones, we're going to set up an allowable deduction for this individual, specifically for the cycle to work scheme. And you'll see we've given information on the cycle to work scheme here. If you click on that, we'll give you some information on it, that it is limited to the 1,000. So basically you fill in your narrative. So I'll just fill in cycle scheme, for example, and I'll put in that he's going to pay €50 back a week, and I update that. When I go into my weekly input then and look at Stephen Jones, he's paid an hourly rate. So if I put in his standard hours as 40 and just double check my deductions field, my cycle scheme is here. And when I update that, there's my gross pay and there is my allowable deduction. So that is my salary sacrifice. It's reducing my gross pay. Therefore, there is no PAYE, PRSI or USC applicable on it. Okay. So again, you'll see there's a number of slides in your presentation for that. Another question we get on a regular basis is how to process holiday pay for an employee wanting their payment in advance and going on holidays. So to do this within the program, within your weekly input or monthly input, whatever pay frequency you're set on, you select the employee in question. Okay, so they've worked this particular week number 40. So this is what this employee has earned in this pay period. Okay, but the employee, Tom Dunn, is actually going on 2 weeks holidays and he wants that payment in advance of going on holidays. So I'm going to enter in 2 weeks amount, which is 800. Where it says weeks holidays being paid in advance, I also need to record 2 here. Okay, this ensures that tax credits, insurable weeks, etc. are allocated for the holiday weeks. It will also remove the employee from those subsequent paid periods so as not to allow duplicate payments to be made to them by mistake. So when I update here, it tells me cumulative kilometres have been adjusted for increment and holiday weeks. So in this instance, this particular employee has a company car. So it is telling me that the benefit in kind information has been adjusted for the extra 2 weeks that I've put into it. Okay. And update file again. So my notional pay has increased. But you'll see because we're updating week number 40, And because I've applied 2 insurable weeks, the actual insurable week period for this employee is showing as week 42. Okay, that will remove that employee from the payment listing for week 41 and week 42. So he won't be available for payment until he returns on week number 43. Okay. Queries regarding maternity leave and what to do on the payroll depend on whether the employer is or is not paying the employee while she's on leave. The most common scenario is that the employer does not pay the employee while she's on maternity leave and she retains the maternity benefit. And as the employer is not responsible currently for the taxation of the maternity benefit like they are for illness benefit, I'm just going to look at some points to note on maternity leave itself. However, we have covered the different scenarios in the presentation, and as Rachel has said, that will be emailed to you all afterwards. Okay, so 1, the revenue receives details of the maternity benefit payments from the Department of Social Protection. The employers do not tax the maternity benefit. The tax due is collected through the reduction of the individual's tax credits and cut-off points. Revenue will make this adjustment to the employee's P2C file and issue a new certificate to the employer. Employers must ensure that the latest P2C file is always applied to ensure the timely adjustment of tax credits and cut-off points. Okay, and again, there's a number of possible scenarios that have been covered in the presentation itself, but they're very similar to the illness benefits, so I will let you look at that. Another question that generates calls to the support desk is how can I change an employee's surname? A simple enough thing to do, but there is a little bit of a knack to it. So within the software itself, you go to Employees and Add and Amend, or process icon number 1. So we look at Stephen Jones, for example. When you select an employee, the surname will be highlighted. Okay. If I click into the surname field with my cursor at the front of the name, so without deleting the original surname, I'm going to type in the new name. So in this case, I'm going to change it from Jones to Johnson. Okay. It pushes the original name to the right. You then hit the delete button on your keyboard and update. Okay. When the new surname remains in the surname field, click on update to save the information. And that's it. Unfortunately, a lot of people will make the mistake of selecting the employee and actually just deleting it, and what you'll see is it actually clears out the entire field. So it looks like you're about to start a new employee. So there is that little bit of a knack to it. Okay. Finally, a common call that we tend to get is when a customer rings saying it looks like all of their payroll employees have disappeared. Thankfully, it's usually just a simple issue of the employer having gone into the wrong pay frequency by mistake and is resolved very easily. So within the program, you'll see here at the very top of the screen, it indicates your version, your company name, and in brackets, it will give if you're sitting on weekly or monthly. To change that, so for example, the employee normally runs monthly payroll and they go into weekly, it indicates there's no employees on file. If you go to the menu heading window, you can switch between weekly and monthly itself. So when they select the correct frequency, again, it'll be indicated in brackets after the company name. So you select the correct one from the list and voila, all your employees should be back in their normal place. So that's the FAQs done. We hope you found this webinar informative. Thank you for your attendance. I'll now pass you back to Rachel, who has been looking through some of your questions.
Okay, thanks Jenny, that was great. So we have a good few questions coming through here. And just a reminder, if you do have any questions, you can type them into the control panel at the right of your screen. So the first question here, is there a way to print one employee's hours?
Yes, there is. I can go into the software and show you how to do this. Okay, so within the employees heading, you can go to the holiday, sick leave, etc. So you select the employee that is hourly paid that you would like to look at the hours for. Okay. So on the right-hand side here under method B, apologies, you can see hours worked per file. So by simply double-clicking there, it gives you the list of each pay period and the hours that were applicable to that pay period. So that can be printed. So that's a handy report there for the list of hours for a dedicated employee, week by week or pay period by pay period.
Okay.
Okay.
When an employee is getting illness benefit only, what class of PRSI is on this?
Well, the system will default to the J class, but as I said in the actual presentation itself, illness benefit is only applicable for PAYE. PRSI or USC is not deducted from it, so it's just a default. The system automatically defaults to J0, but the next time you process payment for the employee, it will automatically change the PRSI class back to the normal class you choose.
Okay. And when will the 2016 software be available?
So generally it would be mid-December, so it'll be sometime between early to mid-December, so possibly around the week of the 10th of December.
Okay. Is there any facility to upload the new employee details form rather than inputting the data manually?
Unfortunately not at the moment. It would have to be entered manually.
Okay. If an employee leaves and comes back, can I use the old record?
Again, unfortunately not at the moment. If an employee is with you and they leave you and they come back, they do have to be set up as a new employee in the same way any new employee would be set up. There's no way of reactivating an old record. The system will recognise that the PPS number is the same, so for the purpose of the P35, it will amalgamate the records because ROS will only accept one entry per PPS number.
Okay. I have an employee without a PPS number. Will this cause an issue?
Okay, it won't cause an issue if you have the address and date of birth. Revenue required the address and date of birth in the absence of a PPS number. Ideally, you would have a PPS number for every employee, but if you don't, you do need to make sure that you have the address and date of birth.
Okay. Are CSO returns required automatically?
Okay, CSO returns, well, CSO would say that they are mandatory, but only certain employers receive them. So if you do receive them, they do expect you to complete them. If you don't receive them, then don't go looking for them, because once you start getting them, you'll keep getting them.
Okay. We had a new starter 3 weeks ago, received P2C last week. This week we received a letter from DSP via ROS, informing us that this person has been receiving illness benefit for a time before starting with us and telling us the taxable amount. How do we enter this into Thesaurus Payroll?
Okay, so I suppose, you would have to go to the payslips on weekly or monthly input, select your employee and access the illness benefit utility. So even though the employee isn't currently sick, you would have to say that the employee is on sick leave for more than 6 days and enter in the figure that the department have given to you to tax. So you would simply enter in the figure and click on update file. So that's going to tax that illness benefit in addition to this payment, the wage payment that you're making to the employee. And just remember the following pay period to go into the illness benefit section and just to untick that the employee is on sick leave, just to bring them back to simply just their pay being taxed.
Okay. Is there any way to see how much annual leave employees have left all on the one sheet?
There is a facility. If you go to the master file, so within the employees menu and down to view master file, at the very bottom of the sheet, it will indicate holiday days taken, holiday days due based on weeks worked, or holiday days due based on hours worked. So that will give you all employees on one sheet.
Okay. An employee on sick leave since August 14, no cert received from revenue referencing sickness benefit. I have not returned any benefits. Is this a problem?
The revenue changed their stance in relation to the onus, that the onus kind of fell back on the employer in January 2012 or 2013, so that the employer does have to assume, if they're out for more than the 6 days, that the employee is in receipt of the statutory or standard illness benefit figure of 188. I'd probably recommend maybe contacting the department if they're on long-term illness and seeing what stance they have on that.
Okay. How do you record bank holiday not paid in the month in question?
Okay, so the pay period that you wish to pay the public holiday payment in, if you go to your payslips and weekly or monthly input, select the employee and click on the additions tab. So in any of the fields for other taxable income, you can type in your description of public holiday and enter in the amount. Okay, and again, as always, just remember to remove that the following pay period, because by default the system will remember it and carry it through for you.
Okay. Do you have to pay back tax refunds when the employee is on sick benefit, and how do you do this?
Okay, the system will automatically calculate, so once an employee is on a cumulative basis, the system will calculate that any tax liability or tax refund, even when they are in receipt of illness benefit. So once a tax refund is due, the system would automatically show that to you, and it would create a payslip with that tax refund on it.
Okay. So that's all the questions that we have through for today. If you do have any more questions after this, you can email us. So I'd like to thank Audrey and Jenny for their time today, and I'd also like to thank everyone for joining us for today's training session. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.